I see.
Looks like we're talking about the Bucket Knight. Now, to be honest with you, this monster could either be one of the easiest ones on the list so far or the hardest depending on how you play your cards. But as per usual, let's start with his appearance. Visibly speaking, he's pretty simple. He's a light gray color with what seems to be some kind of pattern on his shoulders and chest. As his name implies, his body is metallic. His body is littered with spikes and possesses a hole where one's nose would be. Lastly, there seems to be bands that are connecting his body together. Whether these are actually a part of his body or if they are more so an addition is unknown. Now, luckily for us, the Bucket Knight can only be found within a single dungeon that has for the most part been isolated, which is the dungeon of the Crystal Eye. Believe me, you do not want to go there. It's a good place to get yourself killed. His section of the dungeon is a cavern on the lowest level of the dungeon just outside the entrance of the Crystal Eye. It is covered with a variety of old wells which he uses to constantly collect water which is flowing from the cavern's ceiling. This entire section of the dungeon is littered with bones, weapons, and treasure, no doubt being all of the foes the Bucket Knight had managed to kill up to this point, along with their loot. Meaning if you actually manage to defeat this guy, you can walk away with a pretty significant amount of coin. Which leads us to the final segment of this video, which is killing the guy, which as I said before can either be very easy or very hard. Now do not let his initial look deceive you. You see, the Bucket Knight initially will appear with a small filled bucket and only being about 2 feet tall. This is where most adventurers mess up. They underestimate his size and allow him to activate his powers. You see, if the Bucket Knight comes into contact with water, he will grow to a monstrous size of about 30 or more feet, with this, as far as we know, being about as big as he can get even if he touches more water. As you would imagine, the moment he transforms, the average adventurer is pretty much doomed. So my advice is simple: do not let him touch water, which I know it's easier said than done considering how I described his section of the dungeon, but believe me, it won't be as big of a headache as him crushing your skull. Additionally, he has a habit of not attacking until a person challenges him, and even after transforming will wait until the person is ready to fight unless they have no tricks up their sleeves and disrespected him. The moment that something like that happens, he'll beat the brakes off of someone until their shoes come off. I recommend taking advantage of the time he gives you and come up with a way to stop his transformation or make peace for whatever god you serve. If he had already transformed and you hadn't run for your life, I'm going to assume you are not the average adventurer, in which case I should say his body again is metallic. Normal weaponry isn't going to get the job done. I would personally recommend lightning based enchanted weapons, mainly because he'd act as a lightning rod due to his body's composition. Spells are also incredibly useful, though don't get cocky, the guy could easily tear you to shreds if he closes the distance. That being said, happy dungeon crawling. That's all I got for this entry to the Ooo Bestiary. I got a ton of other monster entries coming soon. Thanks as always to my patrons on Patreon who keep the lights on, and as always, I will see you in the next video. Bye.